Celia had been beaten to death with a hammer. In December 1811, London's East End was shaken by two brutal massacres that left 7 dead and the city in fear. On the night of December the 7th, 1811, Timothy Marr, a linen draper and former sailor, closed his shop on Ratcliffe Highway. Inside were his wife Celia, their 14-week-old son Timothy, and apprentice James Gowan. Their servant, Margaret Jewell, had been sent to buy oysters. Upon her return at midnight, Margaret found the shop locked and in darkness. Unable to gain entry and sensing that something was wrong, she alerted a night watchman. Together they forced their way in and were met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Timothy Marr was found near the shop counter, his head battered and throat slit. Celia and baby Timothy were discovered in the bedroom, both having suffered similar brutal fates. James Gowan's body was found in the shop, also violently slain. A bloodied maul, which is a heavy hammer-like tool, was left at the scene. 12 days later, on December the 19th, terror struck again. At the King's Arm Tavern on New Gravel Lane, publican John Williamson and their servant Bridget Harrington were murdered in a similar savage manner. John Turner, a lodger at the tavern, was awakened by noises and heard Bridget scream, "We're all being murdered." Peering into the hallway, he saw a tall man in a dark coat leaning over Mrs. Williamson. Fearing for his life, Turner escaped by tying bedsheets together and lowering himself from an upper window. The alarm was raised and neighbours forced entry into the tavern. They found John Williamson's body at the foot of the stairs, his head crushed and throat cut. Elizabeth and Bridget were found in the parlour, both having suffered similar brutal injuries. Miraculously, the Williamsons' 14-year-old granddaughter, Catherine Stilwell, was found unharmed in her bed upstairs. The city was in panic, and the pressure on authorities to find the perpetrator was immense. A bloody maul was found at the Marr crime scene, was traced back to a sailor named John Peterson, who was at sea. The maul had been stored at the Pear Tree, a nearby lodging house. John Williams, a 27-year-old Irish or Scottish seaman lodging there, became a prime suspect. Williams had a tenuous connection with the Marrs, having served with Timothy Marr in the East India Company. Witnesses claimed he had returned to his lodgings on the night of the Williamson murders, and his laundress reported finding blood on his shirt collar. Despite the circumstantial nature of the evidence, Williams was arrested and held at Coldbooth Fields Prison. On December the 28th, before he could stand trial, John Williams was found hanged in his cell. His suicide was taken as an admission of guilt, and authorities decided to make a public example of him. On December the 31st, Williams' body was paraded through the streets of Wapping and Shadwell, stopping at the scenes of the crime. The procession drew an estimated 180,000 spectators. At the junction of Cable Street and Cannon Street Road, near the Crown and Dolphin pub, a grave was dug. Williams' body was buried with a stake driven through his heart, a ritual for suicides believed to prevent restless spirits. In 1866, during construction work at the same crossroads, a skeleton was unearthed, reportedly buried upside down with a stake through its torso. The landlord of the Crown and Dolphin is said to have kept the skull as a souvenir. The Ratcliffe Highway murders left an indelible mark on London's history, highlighting the city's fear and the limitations of the early 19th century criminal investigations. Debate continues over Williams' guilt, with some historians suggesting he was a scapegoat for a city desperate for justice.